Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. In today's coverage of the ongoing civil war taking place inside of the former state of Ethiopia, we can report the fighting continues. It would appear that the Tigrayan Defense Forces are continuing its offensive operations now west of Gashena. And again, after seizing control of both Lalibela and Gashena, the forces of the Tigrayan Defense Forces, the Tigrayan Army, continue to push down the B-22 highway, and I'll get more into that here in a few seconds in regards to what that looks like and what could be the ultimate objective of the Tigrayan Defense Forces as they continue with that offensive down the B-22 highway west towards Nefes Micha. Also, we can confirm that the battle line south of Weldia, which is in fact south of Mersa, continue to be strengthened by the Tigrayan Defense Forces. There has been repeated attempts by the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, by the Abiy loyalists and Amhara regional militia to launch repeated human wave attacks against these very, very strengthened positions that the TDF now has the advantage in terms of terrain. So again, right now you're looking at the A2 highway heading towards the outskirts of Mersa. And again, these areas have been heavily, heavily fortified. As you can see, as you approach Mersa, you're going to be going through several switchbacks and going through very mountainous and hilly terrain that is the preferred operational terrain of the Tigrayan Defense Forces. And again, these areas here you're looking at on my map, there are several strong points, several defensive lines have been created by the Tigrayan Defense Forces. One of these near Dari, and then obviously you have Mersa, and then farther north you have Weldia. But again, there has been successive attempts by the Abiy loyalist to attempt to force its way north, and those forces really have been stopped after taking significant casualties. And we've talked about that in previous videos, obviously. One of the main issues right now is at some point they may bring up their drone umbrella to cover areas near Weldia and Mersa. Obviously, those Turkish drone operators were specifically operating near Addis Ababa at the main Air Force base. And if you consider the length, the distance from the airbase, from where these drones are operating, and I'm utilizing miles. So again, to Debre Burhan, it's 75 miles, Shia Robert, 104 miles, Ataye, 127 miles, Kamise, 150 miles, Dese, 169 miles, Wachale, 194 miles, and then obviously Mersa, 203 miles. So a very significant distance for a slow-moving Turkish drone to cover. And again, that is outside of the operational distance of the TB2 drone. And that is one reason why the Tigrayan Defense Forces have selected these areas to stand and fight, especially near Mersa and Weldia, because it is out of that drone umbrella. Now, with that being said, is it possible that we could see those Turkish drones, and more importantly, those Turkish command and control systems, the control systems that actually connect with the drone operating from the Kombolcha airport. Now, granted, you could also, in theory, operate these drones from fairly flat roadways as well, and that could be done as well. But again, as they move these systems, which have to be transported via trailer and then over the A2 highway 200 miles to be set up in a new position, that would then risk those both those drone operators and the drone command and control systems, command systems themselves, as they go north. Again, once they get past Shia Robit and they get near Kamise, it's very possible that there are some rear area operations ongoing by the Oromo Liberation Army, by the Tigrayan Defense Forces, which could in fact target those command systems that operate and control said drones. So again, that is one reason why we're seeing that defensive perimeter being set up near Weldia and south of Weldia. Again, because it's out of the current range of the TB2 drone. And if we look at the wing loon drones that were operating out of Samara, that's a little bit of a different story. They do have more of a operational range than the TB2 drone, but with that being said, it's still a fairly significant mile distance, 94 miles, and again, these drones travel rather slowly, and that was one of the issues in the Afar region that the Tigrayan Defense Forces were challenged with. Again, very flat terrain, and it was very easy for drone operators to spot Tigrayan Defense Forces moving in column through the Afar region that could then be targeted by either with the Wing Loon or the TB2 drone. But again, as you start to operate those drones in very hilly mountainous terrain with a canopy, meaning there's foliage that you can attempt to hide from the optical device on the drone, it makes it more challenging for the drone operator to identify targets and deploy munitions against those targets. Again, in the Afar region, there's very little foliage, there's very little canopy to hide under. A little bit different story in the more hilly, foliaged areas of the northern Amhara region. So again, that is one reason why we're seeing certain tactics being deployed. We can also tell in terms of some of the video footage that is coming in of the road marches being conducted by the Tigrayan Defense Forces. You're seeing a much more spatial distance, tactical road marches being conducted by the Tigrayan Defense Forces in terms of separating themselves, where if there is a drone strike, only one or two individuals can actually be targeted versus a grouping of individuals that are tightly compacted. So we're starting to see that now. We're starting to see the TDF start to adapt to some of the drone use that is occurring. But specifically within the area near Weldia and west of Weldia, as the Tigrayan Defense Forces continue its offensive operations west of Gashena, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So, very challenging area in terms of being able to operate. So, Gashena, the B-22 highway, sits atop of basically a plateau that is very, very thin with steep side grades, both to the southwest and to the northeast. And as you get to the newest town that has been captured by the Tigrayan Defense Forces, which is Falakit, again you can see that again the distance of this plateau along the B-22 again is rather thin. Again, it's about 1.5 miles, roughly 1 mile across this plateau and where the B-22 highway sets. And if, in fact, the Tigrayan Defense Forces continue down the B-22 in offensive operations and they are able to seize control of Debre Zebit, then that would afford the Tigrayan Defense Forces a very, very significant defensive position that could be held if, in fact, they do not continue past Debre Zebit on to other towns such as Nefes Micha, which is possible as well. But again, the seizure of Debre Zebit would be both a offensive win, obviously, and then if they're able to hold this area, it would set them up in a very, very defendable terrain. Again, as you approach Debre Zebit from the west, obviously you're moving. The B-22 sits on top of a fairly high mountain ridge, And again, as you approach Debre Zebit, you have to go back along these switchbacks up very, very treacherous mountainous terrain that is, again, the preferred terrain for the Tigrayan Defense Force. So again, the possible seizure of Debre Zebit would be a strategic victory for the Tigrayan Defense Forces, and I would assume that could possibly be their next target. Again, if they're able to retake Debre Zebit, then obviously, and they would have a much easier time defending the areas around Debre Zebit as opposed to what they had been defending in terms of Gashena and then further to the west to Falakit. So again, having the ability to defend Debre Zebit would be much easier than to defend a Gashena or Falakit. But again, Tigrayan Defense Forces have entered Falakit, and our understanding is it is some of the better trained units of the Tigrayan Defense Forces that are operating now along the B-22 highway heading west towards Nefes Micha. So again, a significant amount of combat power of the Tigrayan Defense Forces now operating along the B-22 highway west of Gashena and within the vicinity of Falakit. Probably more so in terms of combat power now along the B-22 highway than we've seen in the past. But again, originally it was discussed in some other channels and even Amhara media, Abiy loyalist media, that the reason behind this offensive was to open the road and seize control of an alternate route of advance as opposed to using the A2 as the A2 was blocked. That is not the case. The A2 highway is not blocked. There is no unit of the Abiy loyalists right now that have the ability to block the A2 highway. That is simply a rumor. That is not fact. That is not occurring. The operations by the Tigrayan Defense Forces west of Gashena, near Gashena, and so forth and so on, is an actual offensive operation designed to take better defensible terrain after pulling out of that area. So again, this is not a operation designed to open a corridor for further retreat. This is an actual offensive operation designed to take and seize better defendable terrain further to the west. And given the casualties that the Abiy loyalists and the Amhara regional militias suffered in these mass wave attacks towards Gashena, towards Weldea, that has really opened the road right now for some of these better units of the Tigrayan Defense Forces to continue to press west, possibly to even threaten Bahir Dar or even Gondar. But again, we're kind of getting the cart before the horse. I think right now the main goal would be possibly Debre Zebit. Again, setting up lines there, very defensible terrain, and then possible a move further to the west in terms of Nefes Micha and other areas as well. And just in reference to the drone use, the deployed drones by the Turkish government, that is an absolute fact now. We can confirm the TB2 drone is on the ground, and those drones are actually being operated by Turkish personnel on the ground near Addis Ababa. And again, that was designed to prevent a Tigrayan Defense Forces in conjunction with the Oromo Liberation Army takeover of Addis Ababa, which seemed very, very likely just a few weeks ago. But again, we're going to continue to monitor the situation and report. That is the current status. Offensive operations by the Tigrayan Defense Forces continue within the vicinity of Falakit. There is also a fairly significant holding force now south of Mursa, which is preventing the Ethiopian Defense Forces, the Abiy loyalists of the former state of Ethiopia, from pouncing upon Weldea and then quite possibly moving further north into the Tigray region proper. We are going to continue to report, continue to analyze the situation, and create content for your consumption. Have a great Tuesday, and we will see everybody very, very soon. We have more information coming in that we are analyzing, and we will have another video out very, very shortly. Have a good day, everybody.